This is going to be a quick video where I share with you some findings I had while messing around with a Supersaw or creating different types of Supersaws. A Supersaw synth is basically a synthesizer that has a bunch of Sawtooth oscillators all slightly detuned from each other to make a very big thick sound. Here's a quick example. It has this very thick sound to it, and it has a lot of uses. For example, you could just do chordy stuff. Or it also sounds really good as bass. And also as sort of plucky. If you turn down your frequency and have an envelope amount that is fairly high, you get this nice plucky sound. So anyways, Supersaw is a very versatile sound, and so it's a good one to know about. I'll have a tutorial on it in the future, but in this video I'm just going to share with you some interesting things that I found when using different oscillators in Reason. So basically, this Supersaw, I'm using subtractor sawtooth waves, and the reason I'm doing that is because initially that was the oscillator that I found that sounded the best when you did this. In a Thor, you have a oscillator called a multi-oscillator that does basically just what I explained, except all in one oscillator. But I wasn't liking how it sounded, and I was finding that doing it with subtractors made it a lot brighter. And I wasn't entirely sure why, and I'm still not entirely sure why, but I was just going to share with you some ways that I was looking at it and going through some of the different oscillators to sort of show what they sound like. And actually, I sort of learned how to use the multi-oscillator and still have the brightness that I like from the subtractor. Although I'm not 100% sold yet. I'll share with you what I was doing. So basically, I have this basic sequence I played for you at the beginning. That sequence. I'm going to turn this frequency all the way up so it's full on. So I had that sequence, and I copied it over to another combinator, which was just using this Thor multi-oscillator. And the basic difference sounds like this. So this is the subtractor, and then this is the multi-oscillator. I'm not entirely sure if you can hear it clearly in the YouTube video, but the subtractor one, it has a lot more brightness. The Thor one sounds like it's sort of dampened, which is not very nice, not really what you want most of the time. You want a nice big bright sound. And so, if you, in Reason, oh shoot, I forget what Reason version it started in, but you have a spectrum equalizer, which allows you to look at the frequencies coming in, and actually I have them muted so I don't have to keep listening to it, but now we can listen to it. So that's the Thor, and then here's the subtractors. You can see right around here, I'm going to mute it, you can see around here it's definitely different. If I go back and forth between the two quickly, you can see how around 10 kilohertz it starts cutting off sooner on the Thor. It's a little bit complicated because it's bouncing all around because I'm playing different notes. But if we, and this is why I did this additional experiment over here where I was just playing a single note at a time. So this is a single note, just subtractor, sawtooth wave, no filter, the filter is turned all the way to the max. The low pass filter is turned all the way to the max, so it's filtering out the minimum amount of frequencies. Here's a maelstrom doing a sawtooth wave. Looks fairly similar. You can see some like additional little sounds in here, and also it cuts off pretty abruptly at around like 17 kilohertz, which is not really something that you can hear with your ear. You can notice a little bit of difference right here, in like the sort of angle that this comes down, so you can hear some difference, but they sound pretty similar. And then if we come over to the Thor, we're actually using an analog oscillator over here on the Thor. Currently just analog oscillator, and that sounds like this. And comparing that to the subtractor, so the subtractor again, and then Thor. The subtractor is definitely a lot brighter, and you can see that again around, actually even a little bit before 10 kilohertz. It starts dropping, like there's a low pass filter on it or something. And there is technically a low pass filter, but again it's turned all the way up, so it shouldn't really be affecting it. But to make sure, I could always bypass it. You see it changes the effect a little bit, but if I go back to the mixer window again, it's still quite a bit lower. It's still definitely brought down, like there's still a low pass filter on or something. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but that's just something that I found while messing around with it right now. You can sort of remedy that by turning on an equalizer and boosting the highs. And if I go back in between these, it's a lot closer to being a lot more similar. I can even bring it down a little bit, like that. See, that looks fairly similar now. Now it's not cutting out until around 17 kilohertz or something, or 16.2 kilohertz, and that gets to the point where you can't really hear it with the human ear, so it makes less of a difference. So if I again play them next to each other, a lot more similar. And so yeah, anyways, basically I was finding that to make the Thor analog oscillator sound as bright as the Sawtooth and the subtractor or the maelstrom, you had to boost highs around 16 kilohertz, which is interesting, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it's something to keep in mind, and it definitely has a noticeable effect when I'm building synths as far as the brightness goes. And actually, you may notice in some of my videos I use a wavetable oscillator for a sawtooth wave instead of an analog oscillator, and if I turn this EQ off, you can see the difference. So this is the analog oscillator, and then here's the wavetable oscillator. So analog oscillator, wavetable oscillator. So if I then go back to the mixer window and show the difference between the analog oscillator, it's actually very similar to the subtractor and the maelstrom. And I'm not entirely sure why that is again, but if we hear this, they all sound fairly similar now. But for some reason the analog oscillator isn't very bright. And yeah, anyways, that's my observation. One other thing is going to the multi-oscillator on the sawtooth wave. It also has the same sort of, it's also being brought down around that same level. So that's also why the multi-oscillator sounds not as bright as the other oscillators. So yeah, anyways, that's my observations. Hopefully you learned something from that. And I'll be putting a Supersaw video out soon, so you can create those sounds. They're pretty simple, but it helps to sort of show you. Anyways, thanks for watching.